Welcome to this webinar. It's about a project we did last year, called Adjusting Technology, where we were trying to co-design technology with a group of older people with limited digital skills. I'm going to talk to you today about the phase 2 of the project. So since the start of the pandemic, we've seen a growing reliance on technology, with digital applications and digital technology now being used as the main form of communication for most people. And these are through things like social applications like Twitter and FaceTime, but also platforms such as Zoom and WhatsApp messaging. However, at the same time, we've also been seeing a shift towards more online services, so-called digital by default. And this has the potential to further widen the divide between those who can access and use digital technology and online support tools and those who can't. So let me, slides not skipping across. So although the pandemic forced more people online, as you can see from the slide, around 6% of UK homes don't have access to the internet. And if we break this down by age, it's around 20% of older people who have no access to the internet at home. And only about 12% of older people aged 65 and over use their smartphones to get online. So, sorry, I've just skipped too far there. So to address this, there have been concerted efforts over the years made to address so-called digital exclusion through various training support and support schemes. And indeed, the Essential Digital Skills Framework, which you can see illustrated on the slide, was developed to address some of these issues. And the framework's been founded around sort of 5 main pillars. It's about communication, handling information and content, transactions, problem solving, and being safe and legal online. And these cover topics such as setting up an email account and messaging apps, accessing information from different sites and across different devices, and understanding that not all online information is reliable or accurate. And it also deals with things like accessing goods and services online and different methods of payment. Now, the consultation on the framework was led by a major banking group, supported by a steering group, which was comprised of technology companies, businesses, and government departments. And although there was a consultation with individuals, it's not clear if this included individuals with limited digital skills, to find out what, if any, skills they have and those they felt they needed, and what concerns they had about accessing the digital world. Why is this important? Well, the reason for this is twofold. Firstly, there's a lack of understanding of the barriers to digital use from the perspective of the individual. We know that individuals are concerned about online security and privacy, and factors like these impact the frequency of their digital use, as well as the types of activities they carry out online. We also know that individuals are concerned about security and data breaches, particularly in relation to the financial matters and things like health service data being online. And secondly, in relation to older people, there's an underlying ageist assumption that older people are reluctant to engage with technology. And this assumption forgets that many of the older generation today will have worked with computers when they were in their early stages of technology. And so they will have some skills with computers and digital, but it may be actually it's a digital skills gap resulting from the pace of change in technological developments rather than older people themselves not having the skills. However, the pervasive nature of this stereotype means that it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, with older adults in particular holding a negative perception of their own ability to learn new skills. And so we need to look at the context in which older people adopt digital skills, understand what skills they have and those they feel they need in order to make training relevant. And this is something we came across in the Adjust Tech project. And it raises a question of whether there's misalignment between what companies and technology companies think are important and what individuals with limited digital skills need to know. So back in late 2020, we started having some of these conversations around digital technology and smartphone technology. This was right at the start of the pandemic. And after looking at what was available on the market, we decided to co-design a launcher app. Now, if you're unfamiliar with them, launcher apps are applications you add to your phone, and they remove most of the functions and apps, leaving just those you need. Now, the problem with these is that app designers seem to think that older people just need the ability to text, phone, that they need a flashlight and an SOS button. So we decided to set up a project. We had some money to see what older people wanted and to co-design a prototype launcher app that met their needs. and the project aims are on the slide. So in the first phase, we recruited some older people with limited digital skills from Wales and the northeast of England. And they were recruited through Digital Communities Wales and Digital Voice for Communities in the northeast. And prior to starting the project, we asked older people in the group some questions around their digital confidence and their digital skills. And you can see from the slide, most of the group being confident they would know what to do if they got stuck. There was a fear of breaking the technology, and 44% were not confident they would find out what they needed online. So what did we do? Well, we ran 3 workshops, keeping the same people in each workshop so that everyone had support to get online. And we used to get the same Zoom link for each session. Workshop 1 explored what technology people were using and the issues they had with it. And then we found that most were using laptops or Android smartphones, occasionally a desktop PC. We found people had issues around security, understanding what cookies meant, understanding what the icons were and what each one meant, issues around connecting to Wi-Fi away from home and using data roaming. And it was clear that most people wanted an easy to use guide. In workshop 2, we focused on existing launcher apps, and the team from the Computational Foundry at Swansea University found a workaround, bearing in mind this was all online, so they could show the group the applications by filming them in such a way that it looked like you were holding the phone yourself. So they were filming over the shoulder. And again, the issues raised with the existing launcher apps was they didn't provide access to the apps that people wanted, and the icons remained an issue. So by the time we got to workshop 3, the tech team had produced a prototype app based on the feedback from the group. And we made the app available to the group so they could test it and give feedback on what they liked and what they didn't like. And what you can see on the screen is part of the prototype app and how you set it up. So they wanted not just the icon, they wanted an icon and text. They wanted to be able to adjust the size of the text, and they wanted to add on the functions that they used and most frequently. So we also tested this prototype with a separate group in Northern Ireland. So in the 3rd workshop, we also proposed the idea of an icon booklet, and we produced that, which is you can see here on the slide. And this booklet is now available on the WHO Global Age-Friendly Intranet site. And we've had really positive feedback from groups and organisations who are using the book to support people. And thinking then about what people wanted, they wanted guidance. So we decided to seek funding to build into the prototype app a series of skills that would add functions back onto the phone as people upskilled. And this led us to the phase 2 of the project. See if that'll slip through. It's a bit glitchy. So phase 2, we took the same approach across 3 workshops, but this time we worked with Cardiff Council. They were interested in the project because they'd seen the icon booklets and taken a large number of them. And they wanted to get involved in the work. So these workshops adopted the same format, only this time they were in person. And we had 3 workshops. It was discover, explore and test and engage and prioritise. And the aim of the workshops was to identify what skills people had and what skills they felt they needed. And we worked with a really lovely group who, to be fair to them, had more digital skills than they gave themselves credit for, collectively as a group. Yet there were things they didn't know. And we grouped these into several themes over the course of the workshops. And then in the final workshop, we checked the themes with the group to make sure they were accurate. They could add in additional themes that they felt we might have missed. And then we got them to rank the skills in the order of importance. And we shall look at these over the next few slides. So I was going, this is a little bit glitchy today. So, both in phase 1 and phase 2 of the project, people, as I say, were primarily using either tablet PCs or smartphones. The group we were working with Cardiff Council were mostly using smartphone and tablets. And they were using them to browse online for shopping, but not necessarily buying online. They were using technology to keep in touch with their family and friends, using things like WhatsApp for group chats. One person used online banking, but had a bad experience, having been scammed and had some money taken. They were also using devices for hobbies, things like reading, gaming apps, colouring apps, puzzles, and taking and storing photos on their devices. But they all had significant concerns that hadn't been allayed by engaging with digital training, and we should look at some of these next. So one of the key issues that arose in both phases of the project was knowing what apps were safe to use and which were free. And a number of people have been caught out signing up to apps only to find they had paid a subscription. And you can see that on this quote here, that I find it confusing. The family say open the app, I go to the app store, and even WhatsApp, there are multiple WhatsApps. Do I pay for that? How do I pay for it? I know you get warnings, but sometimes you've gone too far down the line. You've given them your information, and you think, wow, I don't want to pay all this a month. So it's a quagmire. They were also concerned because a number of people had scams coming through apps such as Facebook, with individuals having scam messages and issues with cloned accounts of friends and not knowing which were real and which were fake. One woman complained that she'd had an image of her taken from a site and that was being used by someone who claimed they were a partner, which caused untold distress. There was a lack of understanding of privacy settings and how to change them to protect our accounts and to only allow friends to see posts, or who to contact even if your account had been cloned or someone you knew had their accounts cloned. And I think all of these things require someone to be confident enough with digital technology to be able to look for the answers and know where to find them. And as I said, there were concerns about whether anyone could access your WhatsApp chats. It was interesting that when we spoke about passwords, there was a general lack of awareness about the password managers existed. And when we dug a little bit deeper, most people were keeping passwords and notes on their phone or on bits of paper, which obviously raises a safety and security risk. And when we raised this with the group around password managers, again, they queried whether they were safe to use. And if you put your passwords on there, would somebody be able to access all of your passwords? So it speaks to the importance of the authenticity of sites and apps, and trust here is key. As we'll see later on, two-stage authentication to protect your data was also seen as too difficult to manage because of the need to navigate between screens. And then there were also concerns about whether it was safe to use Wi-Fi when you're out and about, and if you were using public Wi-Fi, whether anyone could access your personal information. And again, this was important because it was raised with a move towards e-ticketing and online timetables, and even parking apps, where you might need to use public Wi-Fi when you're out and about. There were real concerns around this, about whether other people could access your data, and it was getting to the point where people would be reluctant to use these apps or parking apps or e-ticketing, and indeed the group we were working with weren't using it for some of those reasons. And I think it's not just a concern for older people, we also see younger people who have limited digital skills. And I think unless we address some of these concerns, we only have the potential to widen social exclusion and restrict people's access to other services. What we were surprised about is, like I said, they were using, doesn't seem to understand. Oh, I've gone too far now. There were concerns that around online shopping. So people were browsing online for goods and then going to a physical shop to buy what they wanted. They did have a few trusted sites, so things like Amazon, Marks and Spencer's, Tesco's, those sorts of things. And again, it speaks to the trust around certain retailers. But the concerns they had around particularly grocery shopping was of things like editing the shopping baskets, which they felt was really burdensome, and actually even putting the stuff in the baskets was very time consuming. And as you can see here in the quote, I was afraid I'd end up with 50 bananas instead of 5. I'm nervous of going any further. So they preferred just going to a physical shop. Another issue, which I've already briefly touched on, is navigating between screens. And this was a potential issue around two-stage authentication and authenticator apps, which required you to input a number on a different screen. And they might seem like really small issues, but they're frustrating and they can put people off, and then they can limit what they do online, or they don't upload them at all, they don't download them at all, they don't have that additional layer of security, which makes them vulnerable to having their financial and personal information taken. And I think this is particularly important with the closure of so many high street banks and banking moving online, which may become the only option for some people, particularly in rural areas. So getting to grips with some of these issues is really important if we're not to exclude people from essential services, such as banking. And I think trust is also a big issue here, and the fear and suspicion of the internet is illustrated quite nicely in this quote. Because it's fear and suspicion of the internet and digital sort of overall that drives digital exclusion for some people. You know, as this quote said, I feel it's the fear and suspicion of the internet. We're not educated for it. You know, I've got the wrong impression wrongly coming today. I love it, but there are no classes where you can sit down and just learn about my phone. So as part of the research, we wanted to find out from older people themselves what skills they had, what skills they needed, and we'll look at these next in the order in which they were ranked by the group. So online safety and security, as I said, was a really big one, really big concern. We'd already seen the quote relating to identifying authentic sites, and there was a lack of awareness of password management apps, and the issues around two-stage authentication and sort of trust with choosing apps. How do you know which ones are safe, and how to keep your data safe using privacy settings that, again, sometimes they weren't even aware there were privacy settings on things like Facebook. Installing and using different apps. Again, we've sort of touched on this. There are few trusted the banking apps. Few use their devices for travel apps or timetables or buying tickets online. And although, as I said, they were using supermarket apps, there were issues there, as we'll see, which restricted their use. Editing shopping baskets, we've also sort of touched on already. Using comparison sites, nobody was really using the comparison sites to try and save some money on things like cheaper energy deals or cheaper insurance deals. And again, this related back to the site authenticity and who to trust and who was holding their data. What surprised us a little bit was the group were really keen to learn how their devices work together. They wanted to know what the default settings were and how to install and update apps and delete apps, and questions around such things as, if you delete an app off one device, does it delete it off all your devices? So there were lots of questions we were being asked about how the devices work together, and they really wanted to try and understand that and get to grips with it, which hadn't been covered previously in the training some of them had received. In terms of the phone, there have been some functional issues identified. So as I've said, switching between screens. So when you're on, if you take a call and you're on one screen, you try to answer a call, how do you find the screen you were on? Things like cut and paste on their devices. One person said that they knew how to do that, and the rest were really keen to learn how to do that. So it's quite nice that they were sharing those skills between the group. Resolving account issues. So some people raised that they were trying to resolve account issues on their Kindle using their phone. Sometimes it was TV apps on smart TVs, or you're trying to access sort of some of those online TV content, like not necessarily Freeview, but trying to sort of log into those. And there were difficulties accessing apps and channels from different devices. Using things like airplane mode, again, that was another sort of quite a big one that they were having difficulty with, as switching between screens. Saving and backing up contacts, and whether you could save them on one device, would it save them on others? There was a lack of awareness that you could actually set things like focus and do not disturb and nighttime settings, so that you weren't being, your sleep wasn't being disturbed by your phone pinging in the night. And also how to switch off data roaming, or the fact that you could even save your battery by turning off certain functions. A big one, I think, particularly that we've come across before. So we got there was some stuff around social. So again, around privacy issues, blocking and removing contact. Some concerns around the WhatsApp group chats, and if you delete yourself from a chat, do your messages stay behind? And as I said previously, some account issues on social media. I think it would be fair to say there was a general lack of awareness of the devices accessibility features that were built into phones and tablets. And this was potentially useful for a number of the people in the group. For one woman who was a carer, she was really keen to keep her partner connected, but was unaware that these facilities, these features were available on the tablets. Many of them, actually in both phases of the project, had difficulties with text or audio, particularly sort of text size, or with hearing impairments, whether they could adjust the audio. So they weren't even aware that there were these accessibility features built into the phone. So things like you can voice assistance, dictation, assistive touch, customizing your speech and text, and actually using audio content. So, you know, I think there's a lot there that people want to know how to do, even though they have some skills. There's stuff that, you know, they really didn't understand. And you can see in the image there, it's where they're actually ranking, the group are starting to rank some of these under these issues under the themes. So what was really good to see, I think, around on both these projects was the peer-to-peer learning happening within the group during the workshops, and hearing about how they were supporting each other in learning how to use their devices. In the workshops when we had the computational foundry tech guys in, I think it was really informative for the older people we were working with, because even the tech guys were having difficulty with the technology, which reinforces the message. It's not the older person that can't use it, it's actually a fault of the technology. As the workshop progressed, we could see people growing in confidence. And as I said previously, they were far more skilled than they gave themselves credit for, which speaks to that sort of ageist trope that older people don't do technology, so therefore they must struggle with it. I think this can become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, which limits what older people believe they can do, and it limits their beliefs that they can learn new skills. And I said we saw this people's skills developing and their confidence developing throughout the workshops, and that was just 3 workshops. Imagine what you can do with more skills building workshops like this. It also raises the issue of older people being involved in the design of technology. I think we should involve older people in co-producing not just the technology, but also the applications. We as a team have seen lots of people when we've been out and about with the icon booklets. We've seen lots and lots of younger people picking the icon booklets up. And when we ask them, they're picking them up for themselves, because many of them don't know how to use their devices to their fullest capacity. And I think that's true for most of us. But we don't say for a younger person that they can't use them. So I think we need to change that narrative around older people. It's not that they can't use them. I think we need to stop blaming them for their lack of skills. I also think we need to have more consideration to what older people want to do with technology when we're developing training, and how that may differ for men and women. What we did notice that for the women in the group, some of the activities centered around sort of gendered roles, so caring roles, things like shopping for family and keeping in touch. And we know in relationships that women tend to be the king keepers. They keep their partners engaged with the wider family and friend network. So I think it'd be really important to tailor training to meet some of these needs. And I think that would be beneficial. But what we need for that to happen is to have a greater understanding of what skills older people want and need, and how that relates to how they want to use their phones and what they want to use them for. We are seeking some further funding to try and develop these skills into building blocks and add them to the prototype app to make that app commercially available. We're also seeking funding because one of the key messages that came out of the project was people wanted booklets like the icon booklet, but a series of them based on the skills that were identified in the workshops. So we're still looking for some funding for that. We would like to thank all of our partners on the bid. I think let's bring that slide up again. Sorry, it's being a bit problematic. It doesn't seem to want to slide across. Oh, no, now it has gone too far. So, and we'd like to thank the workshop participants and our co-designers. We'd like to thank the Cherish DE team and the Research Wales Innovation Funds who funded both phases of this work, and the Centre for Aging and Dementia Research for all their support that they've given us. And this is the team. In phase 2, you can see it was Leanne and Rosie and Lauren at Cardiff Council, and the team at Digital Communities Wales and Digital Voice for Communities, who were really helpful and supportive of both phases of the project. If you'd like to know more, we've got a podcast, but we've also produced an animation of the project, which is where I'll end today's webinar. But if you have any questions, please get in touch.
There are a number of myths about older people and our use of technology. Things like older people can't use technology, or older people don't want to learn digital skills. This is just not true. Older people do want to use technology. We don't want to be left behind. Many older people already own a smartphone. We might be limited in what we want to do on the phone, but we still have apps like Facebook and WhatsApp on there. Even as new users, we may have more digital skills than we realise, and we are certainly capable of learning more. We can also help each other to learn new digital skills, as well as getting help from family and friends and organisations. Training is important. There are things we don't know and want to learn to open up the digital world more, like how to browse the internet and what apps to use and how to access sites of interest. Some of the things we want to know are how to keep safe online and protect our data, how to protect social media accounts and group chats, block and remove contacts, how to install and use different apps, such as buying transport tickets online, how to edit shopping baskets or use comparison sites, learning more about how various devices work and interact together, installing updates and what cookies are, resolving issues or transferring photos from one device to another, tips like how to save battery life or backup contacts, and what accessibility features are and how to access them. As older people, we're comfortable with what we can do, but would like someone alongside us to help grow our skills and knowledge so that we can access the digital world with confidence. Learning digital skills can be fun.